Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Welcome home again to our shingle cottage here in Cambridge. Today we're removing some of those shingles. We're going to be showing you how to make necessary shingle repairs. This is all happening on the south side of the house. I'm also taking you on a little trip to Vancouver, British Columbia to visit the factory where the shingles are cut and manufactured. And we'll be here with Riley. We'll be working on restructuring some of the roof members on the top of this house so that we can build some dormers. Stick around. It's good to have you home again.
Bob Vila's home again.
Okay, let's get started on the south side of the house. Hi, Riley.
Hi, Bob.
I see you and Jim are working over here on some brand new shingles.
Yes.
You know, this is such a complicated sidewall job, and Greg, our architect, has gone through the entire house, all 4 elevations, and on the computer he's cross-hatched every surface that needs to be re-shingled. And here on the south side, it's all of it except for the area where the 3 windows are here on the left.
Right, that's quite a bit.
Why so much?
Well, this wall happened to take the brunt of the beating over the years.
Of the weather.
Of the weather and everything.
Yeah, the condition of the shingles up there is pretty bad, but can't they be just kind of scraped and repaired and nailed down a little bit to hold them better?
Not really. There was a point in time when perhaps it could, but that's already been done and tried, and now they're all splitting and they're really brittle. So anything you do to them is just going to do more damage.
The other thing that he was explaining to me is that we're re-roofing the house. We'll be doing a lot of flashing repairs and changes to the flashing, and you can't do that without actually getting rid of the shingles.
That's exactly right, yes.
Yeah. So what kind of shingles are we using?
These are the red cedars. They've been rebudded. These are about the best you can get.
And that's important, I suppose, because the fact is that this is a very labor-intensive job, replacing all of these shingles, even though we're nailing with a power nailer, right?
We're nailing with the power nailer, but there's so much detail on this house, and like I said, it's so labor-intensive, it makes no sense to use anything but the best shingle you can get your hands on.
Yeah, now what about the nailing itself? Isn't it better when you're hand nailing all of this?
Not with these pneumatic nailers they have now. We can use stainless steel.
So these are stainless steel annular ring nails, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what you want to use with a red cedar shingle.
Yeah.
Is this stainless steel.
Yeah, because you know you can get a 30-year life out of something like that.
Yeah.
But it's true that we have detail here, like the corners, which are not only laced but they flare out.
Flares out, right.
Which is a difficult detail to accomplish. Where can we see a little bit more of that?
Well, we've got an existing situation right around the corner here that Chris is getting started in on right now.
All right, let's meet Chris Clark, who's heading up the team here. Hi, Chris.
How you doing, Bob?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Now, you haven't done any of the removal here yet. Do you start at the bottom or at the top?
No, we start at the bottom, Bob. What happens is if you started at the top and you tried to peel the shingle off, that's all you get is 1 shingle. If you start at the bottom, you loosen the bottom one, and then they consecutively bring the shingles up with it, so you can get your bar in behind it.
It's a quicker job that way.
Right.
Now, I see you've got 2 or 3 different types of bars here. Which is the best tool?
Well, we'd start with the smaller bar to get in underneath here so that we can get them worked out, and then I'd get into a little bit larger bar so that you get back away from the work, get a little more leverage, and don't get into the splinters flying.
Yeah, and this is a tool that really helps you get in underneath and pull a nail.
Right.
Which I've seen slate roofers use, but...
Right. What we do for that is if we're patching in and we only want to remove 1 or 2 shingles without damaging everything, we drive that up underneath and hook the nail and then drive it back down and pull the nail without damaging anything.
Exactly. Well, let's give you a hand, and I guess we want to be careful at the bottom not to damage what's ever underneath, creating this flare, right?
Right.
Here you go, Riley. Here's one for you.
Okay.
Oh, boy. Here it comes in. Look at this. Now, I got to think that these are original 100-year-old shingles.
I believe they are, Bob. We've cleared a couple of the areas off.
One thing that I'm looking at right here is you've got creosote. So these were originally dipped in creosote as a preservative. And then at some later point in time, they stained over to give it that reddish look.
Right.
And then the last coat of paint or stain was this gray.
Correct.
But I'd say they're almost 100 years old, and they really are brittle.
Yeah, they are. They're very brittle.
Yeah. Here we're looking at the original sheathing of the house, which is almost a century old, and it's tongued and grooved dressed pine. That really tells you something. And originally it was covered with this rosin paper, which helped to prevent moisture infiltration and stuff. Now we use a house wrap product, which I'll give you a hand with here, is a spun olefin kind of thing, which allows moisture that's inside the house to get out, but keeps cold drafts from penetrating. Now, in order to create a flare down here at the bottom, we've added a ground that we've built up a little bit with a tapered piece, and that wants to be a couple of inches out, and there's another one right here. Now, Riley, where do you get started? On the corner?
Definitely, yeah. We want to start on the outside corner here because we're going to be lacing these shingles together. So it gives us a little more leeway to start here and then work to the inside.
Now, when you're lacing them, you're not really mitering them, you're just butting them.
You're butting them, but you're making sure that the seams are staggered as you go up.
And there's no corner board. Right.
Yep.
Now, Chris, what are you doing over here?
What I'm doing is I'm setting a ledger board to put my first course of shingle on. We're going to ultimately end up with 2 courses of shingle on this bottom side for weatherproofing purposes. So I'm just plumbing off of a pre-established mark that I had. I'm going to set this in. And then I've got one more leg that's going to return around the corner so that we can keep going. Riley, get that.
Okay, so we're hand nailing all of the shingles at the corners. Now, do you have to also double them up?
Yes, you need to double them up so that we create a drip edge. We're going to drop them down about 3/8 of an inch and allow the water to run off the bottom edge instead of back.
And first we have to take the ledger board and lower it.
Correct.
Okay, so this is handwork in the truest sense of the word, in that each shingle has to be shaped, and he's just roughing it out right now with the utility knife. But it has to be shaped to take that flare. Fortunately, you only do that for the first several courses, and then you're going straight up the wall. And now to attach it, do you have to trim that down a little bit?
Yeah, trim it down a little bit more. Makes it a little easier with the plane.
Yeah, because the final step is to take your little plane
Take my block.
and dress it up. And now you do the same thing on the opposite side, right?
Correct. We're going to lay another shingle on top here as we did that one.
Mark it up the back,
Mark it up the back.
cut it just like you did, and keep on going and going, and it's tedious work. You're doing a great job. We've got a break for messages, and when we come back, we're actually going to be showing you how these are made. Stick around. We're on the Fraser River, about 40 miles east of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And we're going to show you how they make shingles today. We're visiting the Walden Forest Products Company, and our tour guide today will be Jack Davidson, who's manager of the Cedar Shake and Shingle Bureau. Hi, Jack.
Welcome to British Columbia,
Thank
Bob.
you very much. Good morning. This is an impressive place. I mean, these logs are very sizable affairs. Where do they all come from?
These are logged all up and down the west coast of British Columbia, from Washington State all the way up to Alaska.
All the way up to Alaska. And it's certainly not a new industry. It's been established for many decades.
It's a very old industry. Most of the mills along the river are second, third generation. Before them, the Indians used cedar, their longhouses.
And they've been shipping them down to California and to Washington, as well as, I think, since the early part of the 1900s, all the way out to the East Coast.
All over the United States, west coast.
Before we get started on taking a tour of the plant, I got to ask you about this little craft back here. It says Walden 1, Vancouver, BC. What do you call that boat?
This is what we call a log bronc. It's a west coast winder. it has the propeller in the middle of the boat, the very center, and it spins around any direction he wants that boat to go.
I wonder the guy has to take Dramamine every morning, huh?
He needs his seatbelt on.
Well, why don't we get started with the tour?
Up the hill here.
That is one pretty amazing log. Now, this is a red cedar tree that is how old, do you suppose?
This particular log's probably 100 to 200 years old. It's starting to rot out in the middle like most cedars does.
And that would obviously tell us that we're looking at virgin growth. This is material that was not planted or farmed, but actual virgin growth here in Canada, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So what we're looking at this situation is essentially a cut-off saw.
This is an 8-foot inserted tooth tungsten tip cut-off saw.
What's the diameter of that blade?
8 feet.
8-foot diameter.
Yeah.
And that man is working there all day just hauling away the cut-offs.
Yeah, his job is to clear the saw.
And he better stay clear of the saw.
Yeah.
Okay, so all of these logs will be cut into these, what, 18 or 24-inch lengths?
Yes, there's hydraulic log stops on the deck that the operator in the booth here can adjust depending on the grade of the log.
And then
what the defects are in the log, he reads and produces a 24-inch block for a shake or an 18-inch block which may have some knots or other defects for the shingles.
And then right behind him, the next station is where the mauling operation happens, right?
The axe is called a pantograph because of the way it moves around the area.
Yeah.
And it's a hydraulic axe that cuts the blocks into sizes that a man can physically lift.
So we're making two types of shingles here. One is the classic shake, and the other one is the formal pre-butted shingle.
Yes, in a Walden mill, which is technical, the other side is shingles. This is the shake line. This gentleman here is the tuberman, and he's making shake blanks, which are just 1-inch split pieces of board. These blanks will then be sawn on the resaw diagonally, making 2 shakes from each blank.
Okay, and then from there, where do they go? Is that it?
No, they'll be edge trimmed on the clipper saw, and then they fall down the chute to the packing area, where the packer grades and packs them into the bundles for delivery.
So these are easier to make than the other ones, right?
I think both have their own difficulties. I think the machine operators making shingles or shakes both have to have skills in their own field.
Wow. On this side of the conveyor belt, you've got a different product being manufactured, right?
On this side is the shingle line. Shingles are a more tailored, smoother surface product, not split.
They're what you call either rebuts or perfections, like we're using at my house.
Yeah. Number 1, 18-inch perfection shingles.
Okay.
Number 1 quality.
Now, is there just one cutting operation?
There's 8 machines in a row here. They cut different products. This one's cutting 24-inch royals.
And that saw blade is just awesome. Right there, right next to his hand.
The machines are old technology, haven't changed for 50 years. The sawyer has to pick shake the shingles off the head saw with the one hand, transfer them, and then trim the edges and square the butts here on the clipper saw on this side.
Well, we've all been to the butchers where they're slicing ham, and this isn't quite the same principle.
These men have to watch what they're doing all the time.
They really have to be fully concentrated. All right, and then from here they all drop down to the loading station.
His other job, he has to sort them, and there's 4 bins here, which are graded 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and he does that as well. They drop down to the packing station.
Okay, then the shingles are all being bundled up here. How many bundles to a square?
4 of these bundles of shingles cover 100 square feet, 1 square.
Okay, and what about the shake?
On the shake side, remember they were 5 bundles because they were bigger bundles.
Okay, now I want you to explain to us about the different grades of shingle.
Shingles are graded by where the defects are. Number 4 allows defects anywhere.
And that would be exposed.
Yeah. Number 3, 6 inches clear.
Okay.
Number 2 is 11 inches clear.
All right.
And number 1's like we're putting on your project, 100% clear, 100% edge grain product.
Perfection.
Perfection.
Jack, thanks for the
Thanks,
tour.
Bob.
We got a break for messages. Don't go away. We'll be back in Cambridge in a sec. All right, we're back and we're up on the 3rd floor now. And we're joined by Gregory Rochlin, the project architect. We've got a real interesting situation up here. Hi, Riley.
Hi, Bob.
You're just doing takeoffs. We've got a situation where we're trying to create a 30 by 26 foot room, right?
That's right, about that size.
About that size, which will be a family room. And we've removed a lot of partitions. We're down to a bare roof. We've got collar ties that hold that roof together.
That's right.
But we want to go one step further. We've got, on the outside of the house, a beautiful set of dormers that serve the 2nd floor. And they're large dormers. They have shed roofs on them. And if you look at the very first one closest to the street, it has an addition on the top that services the 3rd floor.
That's right.
With a little hip roof on it. And we want to recreate both of those situations here for the benefit of this room. So it's complicated framing that we're doing here, right?
There's a number of problems. Originally, this roof was never intended to take a real heavy snow load because the house was uninsulated, so that in turn of the century, the heat just went to the 3rd floor, melted the snow, snow came off the roof. Now, we're going to heavily insulate the roof. It's going to have a big snow load.
Yeah.
We need a stiff roof because now we're going to plaster the underside of the joists.
That's the other thing. The original situation, you had small rooms that had flat ceilings with the plaster. Now, if you put the plasterboard directly onto this roof, you got to stiffen it so that it doesn't crack.
And just to make it even more difficult for us, we're removing most of the roof framing on this side of the roof.
Yeah, this will all be cut out. And how does the structure work? I mean, they're up against each other right now, right?
Well, originally, it's like my fingers. They're just a group of rafters that pushed against each other. And imagine my other fingers are the collar ties that are keeping the roof from spreading.
Yeah, and now we're putting up these, well, these are micro lambs, right?
That's right.
And so we're creating doubled up situations here. How many of these will we put up?
4.
Here you go. Do you need this to persuade it?
Oh, thank you.
All right. And if you look at the one behind Greg here, we've got one already in place. And explain how the load gets transferred down.
Well, this big heavy rafter is now doing the work of all these rafters over here, which are going to get headed off for the dormer. So all the load from this part of the roof comes down to this rafter and then comes onto this, what's called a cripple wall, which originally brought some of the roof load down to this floor, and the rest of it went down this gambrel rafter.
Okay.
Now, because we've got a much heavier load, we're going to have to increase the size of this, increase the size of this stud, and put a beam underneath the floor to take the additional loads. And with all this additional framing, now the roof will be stiff enough so when you plaster it, your plaster won't crack.
Right. And you got to go to a great deal of trouble. It's an enormous amount of work. The only way to avoid this is don't hire an architect. Just kidding. Okay, so I guess we've got one in place and another one to go on the other side. Now, on the other side of the roof itself, you've built some temporary walls, right?
Well, we're going to have to increase the depth of all these rafters. 1, to make them stiffer, and 2, to give us enough room to get insulation in. And
so you'll sister something on.
So sister something. Now, in order to do that, we have to take this cripple wall out so we can slide the rafters up. And so this is 2 temporary cripple walls, one here and one here, that will hold the roof in place so when we take this out, your roof doesn't collapse.
Thanks for doing all the planning work, Greg.
Thank you, Bob.
We got a break for some messages. Don't go away. Well, I'm afraid we're running out of time for this week. Come home again next time when we're going to be working in the basement. Actually, we're pouring a 2-inch slab throughout the whole basement area, and that includes first putting in some cast iron piping for the plumbing. Also, we're going to be putting the finishing touches on framing the dormers that we were just looking at today, and taking you down to Sterling, Georgia, where we're going to visit the plant where they cut down all that framing lumber. Till then, I'm Bob Vila. It's good to have you home again.